Good afternoon, everybody. This is Tim Green with Rattle Magazine, and this is your critique of the week for Friday, April 17th. And that's my dog barking in the background. We have a German Shepherd, and he has a new friend. 2 houses down, there's another German Shepherd, and they like to bark at each other now. So this is your critique of the week, and what we do, if this is the first time you've joined us, is that we go over a couple poems from a poet every Friday afternoon. Turn your phone sideways, click on full screen, or click on HD so you see this in high definition and you can follow along too. And at the end of the show, we will do our live drawing for the month of May's contributors to the critique of the week. So if you saw, what you should be doing is following us on Facebook, of course, and make sure you click follow and see first so you get our posts. I try not to post too many. I try to make, maybe 2 or 3 or 4 posts a day, and that's it, so I don't flood anybody. But if you do that, you won't miss anything. So click on follow and see first, and then you'll see all our posts. And one of them on Wednesday was a post where I said, comment if you'd like to be included in the drawing for this for the month of May. And we had about, 30 people and who asked in, so we'll do a random drawing for the people who asked this time and the people last time. It's the last 2 months worth, so you could have your name in there twice if you saw both posts. Eventually we get to everybody who wants to do this. If you keep following our page and joining in when we ask you to, that's just one of the ways to keep up engagement, I guess, too, in addition to doing these really fun critiques of the week, which are a highlight for me. I really enjoy them every Friday afternoon. Now, we're also streaming on YouTube, and a few people are watching there. But just to let you know, the main place that we're doing this is Facebook. YouTube's kind of like a backup for people who can't get into Facebook. You can still watch, but I'm really only following along with the comments over on Facebook because the notifications and comment system is much better on Facebook than YouTube, even though YouTube's better for archiving and saving things and having higher definition and stuff. So hi, Jessica Dawson, Mike Richardson, Catherine Swanson, thanks so much for joining. We have 30 people watching over on Facebook and a few over on YouTube, so let's get going. Now today's poet is Muhammad Umar Jee Salimi. And he sent a whole bunch of poems, so we'll see how many we can get through. Probably 2, but there are more if we can keep going. So let's see what we get here. And this is the first poem, "To Lahore with Love," and I assume that's a city in India, but I didn't check it. But a bunch of these poems are written to Lahore and about Lahore. So here's the first of them: "To Lahore with Love. Halfway across the world, a sudden gust of heat spewed from a malfunctioned vent reminds me of Lahore, a city strewn with wormholes, where time stops to wed the sacred with the wild. A city of travelers, wanderers, and unsettled dust, of peddlers and beggars not letting it sleep, of the summer sun kept at bay by jinn-possessed trees, standing sentinel on the mall, of misty mornings rising from the muddy waters of its shallow canal, magic and music, prayer, calls, and bazaars, stray dogs in early mornings. It is too much and everywhere. No roll of string or trail of crumbs or wings or sleep brings you out of it. Its streets sing and bend around to gently draw you back in its folds of spices, heat and cool breezy nights. Its memory winks back in the traffic lights shimmering in potholes of foreign streets. Its whiff catches you off guard as you ruffle through ochre dog-eared pages and libraries overseas. It's a city you never wake from, an Atlantis still alive, a Shangri-La where people happily die. But it's not a patch of paradise, it's bricks and mostly unsettled dust. Verdant and overflowing, its gardens veil lovers and mystics, its tea shops brew chai and companionship, its bazaars overflow with floral designs and chime with bangles delicate as letters. This city is a poem with no refrain, a painting beyond a canvas, 1,001 nights which the author never closes. It keeps going and growing at its own languid pace inside my gut, up my spine, across my skin, planting an unsettling speck inside my brain, which I'm afraid will be the only part of the city left when I return. That's a very nice poem by To Lahore with Love by Muhammad Umar Jee Salimi. So thanks so much for sharing this, Muhammad. Let's take a look at it a little more detail. So To Lahore with Love, I like the title because it sets the scene, tells you where we're going, and you're prepared. Now, halfway across the world, a sudden gust of heat spewed from a malfunctioned vent reminds me of Lahore. So it's a really good intro. It sets the stage really well. So we know, along with the title, we know exactly where we are. We know the speaker is somewhere else, halfway across the world. And then we get the sudden gust of heat, which is a good, it's a good sense. It makes you feel that gust of heat. Maybe you hear the malfunctioning vent too at the same time. And so we're thinking of Lahore from the other side of the world. So we know exactly the speaker, not who the speaker is, but who the speaker is with respect to the poem and with respect to us. So it really sets us up well in that beginning way I usually talk about in these critiques, where you have to let the poet know, or the reader, I should say, know what's going on and where we are. You have to situate it. Like, let us know the landscape we're entering so that we don't feel lost and disconnected. And that does a good job here. A city strewn with wormholes. Now, this is the first thing that made me wonder, just because, wormholes is a science fiction kind of thing. I mean, there are wormholes, but I think that would be two separate words. So that threw me off just for a second. Let's see. Where time stops to wed the sacred with wild. That's a nice line. So if there's just a space there, then the wormholes wouldn't throw me off and we're still good. A city of travelers, wanderers, and unsettled dust. Now, one of the things that keeps happening in this poem is dust comes up over and over again. And not in a way that strengthens it and makes it more interesting every time. It sort of just repeats. There's dust a few times. There's dust over here too. I think there was 3 or 4 dusts. So pick one time to use dust, and then let it go. Of peddlers and beggars, not letting it sleep. Of summer sun kept at bay by gin-possessed trees, standing sentinel on the mall. So I like this. So there's good descriptions. I like the gin-possessed trees. Of misty mornings rising. See, misty mornings is a little bit of a cliche. Maybe do something different with that. From the muddy waters of its shallow canal. And muddy waters, too, the same thing. They're just sort of not quite cliches, but they're pretty generic descriptions of something. Magic and music, prayer calls and bazaars, stray dogs and early mornings. So you get the mornings again. So there's a little bit of sort of like the dust that keeps coming up. There are a few images that keep coming up and are repeated that really shouldn't, because they don't add anything new. So we already see the misty morning. We don't need the stray dogs in the early morning. So maybe add the stray dogs to this list and leave off morning. It is too much and everywhere. No roll of string or trail of crumbs or wing or sleep. I like this list of ors too. When you see an or, you usually expect it to sort of be 2, and then it extends nicely to or wings or sleep, so it sort of propels the language forward in a nice way, brings you out of it. Streets sing and bend around. See, the streets are singing again. So this is kind of this thing where it's just a little, it could be like, a shorter poem, like maybe a half the size or maybe 3/4 the size, without really losing anything if you cut out the stuff that's repeated. And bend around to gently draw you back in its folds of spices, heat, and cool breezy nights is another sort of, trite kind of just general description. Its memory winks back in traffic lights shimmering, potholes, again we have potholes repeating, of foreign streets, its whiff catches you off guard. And all of a sudden, do we have a U before? Yeah, I don't think so. Is that the first? Well, here, gently drew you back. Is that the first U? Where's the first U? Because it didn't really stand out when I was reading, but now that I realize it, the introduction of that U does, I think that's the first U. So gently draw you back. So it's sort of a late introduction for the second person, because then when you come across that, you wonder like who the you is. And it doesn't really matter. So it's sort of a syntax thing where you're writing as if you're not writing to a you, and all of a sudden you are writing to a you. And the you might be I, but it's just an ambiguous word to use there. And here too, which catches you off guard. So who's it catching off guard? Is it me? Swift catches me off guard. Because up here, halfway across the world, a sudden gust. So the gust comes. It reminds me of Lahore. That's right. So there we have me. So if you're going to use, just be consistent there. If you're going to use me, then this should be me. And this should be me. But if you want it to be you, make it you there, and we can do it all the way through. Let's see, as you ruffle through ochre dog-eared pages and libraries overseas, it's a city you never wake from. An Atlantis still alive, a Shangri-La where people... Right here, I feel like there's a good energy that comes in. This feels very spontaneous and creative in this section. You can feel the poem start to pull you forward a little more. It's a city you never wake from, an Atlantis still alive, a Shangri-La where people die happily die. But it's not a patch of paradise. It's bricks and mostly unsettled dust. We get the dust again. So you got to find new ways to say things like that and not repeat those sort of generalized descriptions. Verdant and overflowing, its gardens, veil lovers and mystics. I think we had mystics before too, right? Somewhere. Its tea shops brew chai and companionship. Its bazaars, again, bazaars is repeated. Overflow with floral designs and chime with bangles delicate as letters. That's a good description. This city is a poem with no refrain, a painting beyond a canvas. I really love that. The painting beyond a canvas is maybe my favorite line in the poem. 1,000 nights, which the author never closes. I'd say instead of never closes, I'd keep it positive and say maybe like 1,000 nights. You don't want to introduce the author, so 1,000 nights always open, or something like that. That keeps it positive and doesn't have to introduce the author. It keeps going and growing, at its own languid pace inside my guts. So we're back to the my. We're from the you that we had up here. We're switching back to the my. So keep that consistent. Like pick one. Up my spine, across my skin, planting an unsettled speck inside my brain, which, I'm afraid, will be the only part of the city left when I return. It's a good ending too. It tells us it takes us on a journey, but it tells us mostly what you're feeling. So there's a little bit of a show don't tell kind of thing in there, but I think it works because it takes us to the place, and we don't really see that coming. So it tells us in a way that's still surprising. So I like the way it ends. A couple more notes, which you can really see here, but which on a line all by itself, like why that line break? And there are a few other line breaks that just seem, which the author of, and we already crossed this out, but, ending on an article, you probably shouldn't do it unless there's a reason, because what you're doing is taking away the sense of a poem that it is, in a poem, each line has meaning, and it's okay to break that if there's a reason you're breaking that and you're getting away from that, and you don't want people to pay attention to lines, but you are writing it in lines. So, it's important to make sure that the lines are doing something every time you break them, So, standing sentinel on the mall of misty mornings, like why not break it there, Rising from the muddy waters, break it there. So then you have just better breaks, where it's like a natural pause and concepts are contained. And that shows that you're sort of caring about how you're guiding us through the poem, which is really what line breaks are about, in my opinion, is just showing that the author knows what's going on and why they're making the choices they are, and that there's someone we can trust as we're drawn through this world. Now, I like this poem a lot, and the one thing, though, I think there are a few places where we get some really good details like that. The bangles, delicate as letters. There are a few places like that, but a lot of the descriptions are generic. So I was thinking I could point you to a poem to just use as maybe inspiration for where do you want to go with this to make this a little more vibrant. And it's really tough to write a poem like this, but this is Patricia Smith's poem that this reminded me of, Tavern, Tavern, Church Shuttered Tavern. It won the 2010 Rattle Poetry Prize. But listen to the difference between this, with its really specific details, and the more general details in this poem. So the main thing I want to say with this poem, To the Whore with Love, is to add those, really specific details that make us feel like we're actually there in that specific place. That's kind of the only thing that's missing. I like the arc of it. I feel like I'm taken there, but I really want to feel that I'm there. And so look at how Patricia Smith does it in this poem. This is Tavern, Tavern, Church Shuttered Tavern. Then Goldblatt's with its finger-smeared display windows full of stifled plaid pinafore and hard-tailored serge, each unattainable thread cooing the delayed lusciousness of layaway. Another church then, of course, Jesus pitching a blustery bitch in every other block. Then the butcher shop, with inexplicably the blanched, archaic head of a hog propped upright to lure waffling patrons into the steamy innards of yet another storefront. See, so we get this, we get the actual butchers, we get the head of a hog propped up, and the smell of it, and the steamy innards, where they drag their feet through sawdust. We get these details, and we don't get these details in To the Whore with Love, and that's really the only kind of thing that's missing. And Patricia Smith's poem goes on just through these really great details. And it's like a journey through this. I won't read it all. You can check it out at rattle.com. But so she goes through these details in a very similar way that you do, the author does in this poem. And then at the end, the bus revs up its tire engine, backs up a little for traction, and drives smoothly into the sweaty space between their legs, the only route out of the day we're riding through. And so it's sort of a similar, we come to a conclusion here too, So it's this journey where we find some kind of little extra meaning at the end, which is the exact same structure, I thought, is To the Whore with Love. So check out this poem for these specific details, the seer's best cinnamon-tinged toes, their legs so unlike their arms and faces. Bring us there with that. Make us feel the clothes people are wearing, the taste of the foods that are in those bazaars. All those kind of details, to bring that Lahore to life. That's what kind of we want to do. So I take the structure of this poem, which works really well in the topic, and just try to inject more details like those, the billars overflowing with floral designs and chime with bangles delicate as letters. This is the sort of the right here. This is the ideal. This is what this is the best of the poem and what you want to be doing the whole time. And if you can do that the whole time and pull it off, this will be a really great poem. So that's my opinion about this one. Let's see what everyone's saying, because I've been talking without stopping for a while. Let's see. T.R. Paulson says, I like the voice in this, makes me want to go there. Chris Beaver, heat malfunctioning, gust, spewed, strong sense. Lahore is in trouble from that connection. Interesting. There are little hints at things, too, in the poem, which is kind of cool. Let's see. Yeah, M.L. Clark mentions the wormhole. Oh, maybe, I thought... That's funny. Yeah, I actually thought... I actually imagine holes for worms, because it's strewn with wormholes. But it is wormholes where time stops. So, yeah. So that was confusing in the wrong way. It was meant in this sort of sci-fi way of wormholes. But M.L. Clark suggests slipstream, or maybe stop time, or something that fits a little better. Yeah, it's kind of like a mixed metaphor, actually, because it is the notion of stop time, which is what that's supposed to be. So good comment from M.L. Clark there about that wormholes. Let's see. Oh yeah, and Jessica Dawson mentions the footnotes, which I meant to bring up and I completely forgot. So this poem has a couple of footnotes, and a bunch of Muhammad's poems do. Here he says the mall, and then he explains the mall in Lahore is one of Lahore's primary and most famous roads. It was constructed under the British Raj and was named after the mall in London. And then the other one just explains what 1001 Nights are, which is a collection of Middle Eastern folktales compiled in Arabic. I think we all know what 1001 Nights is. So I'm not sure. I don't think you need footnotes. I don't think there's anything, that... my opinion of footnotes, occasionally people will send poems with footnotes in. And I much prefer the poems just to be self-contained and not have footnotes like that. Unless you're playing with it as part of the form, it doesn't really add much. If there's something that's like a detail that's so important that we need to know, but we wouldn't. I mean, you have to remember that we all have, I think 80% of the world's population has the Encyclopedia of the World in our pockets. So we can look up what the mall is in Lahore. And so we don't need to be told details like that. And we already know what 1001 Nights are. So we don't need to be told that kind of stuff. If there's something that does need to be told that we wouldn't know and would be really hard to track down, I'd prefer to be explained with an epigram up here, just to keep the poem. Because what you don't want, you're trying to build this world with a poem where the reader enters the world. Like you're creating a space that's really its own universe. And you're saying, come in and see this universe that I just made. And that's really what you're doing with a poem. And so anytime you bring us out of the universe to show us a footnote, you're ruining that magical effect. You're like breaking the spell that you've already cast. So I would avoid that unless... We have one poem that's really cool. I can't remember the name of the author off the top of my head, but it's a poem that's pretty short, and then the footnotes are like 3 pages long, and the footnotes are part of the poem, which is really cool, and that's a fun form to play with. But for a regular poem, I wouldn't add footnotes. So, and then you also run the risk, like everybody knows 1001 Nights. So you kind of... I want to say you're insulting the reader a little bit, assuming that we wouldn't know what that is, but in a way it is. The main point, though, is it takes you out of the poem, so I would not include footnotes. Let's see. So Cecilia Serhando says, I wonder if the length and the endlessness of the poem is deliberate. A city you never wake from, you can never get out of it. It never closes. Yeah, that's a great point. And I think you have to... I think that's a great way to read the poem, and I think it works that way for sure. So instead of trying to shorten it, that's why I suggest adding a lot more details to extend it and let us get lost in this universe that you're creating, but in a real tangible way that we can really feel and engage all the sentences and all that stuff with really specific details, the colors of things, the shapes and smells and sounds. Like really be precise, because that's what we really want. Chiara Paulson, who loves form, and I do too, she says, I wonder if you could try this as a villanelle or sestina. Take some of the repetitive words and run with them, perhaps as an exercise. It's a good advice from T.R. Paulson. Let's see. About the line breaks, Chad Frame says this might be a function of the columns forcing the word to the next line in Word. I don't think that is. He sent this as a PDF that was like this. But there are other poems. He sent like 6 poems, I think, and they all have line breaks like that. So let's see. And Kathy Gibbons says, I kind of feel this way, that the repetition lends to the echo of the city in his mind. Yeah, so that's playing off on what Celia said. And I agree too. So if you repeat the dust, wherever the dust was, what you have to do is repeat it in a way that's a little different every time. And then that adds like layers to the image instead of, really what's going on is when you use a word, any word or phrase, you're making little constellations of neurons fire in our brain, right? And if it's something that fired recently, there's just less of an effect because it's more recently been fired. And so, but if you can add new stars to that constellation to make it different, then it grows and expands what we're thinking of. So and where it's more stimulating. So if you use dust and other things repeatedly, make sure it's like different kinds of dust and different, try to find as many different ways to say that as possible. Let's see. And Catherine Swanson says, I think the poem is stronger in first person. Yeah, I think so too. I I would go with a me instead of the you. Let's see. Jessica Dustin says, Tim, when you use these other poems as samples, how do you find them? Do you remember this poem from 10 years ago? Yeah, I remember. And did Salimi's poem remind you of it? That's an incredible memory. I have a terrible memory. But you publish poems, you read them 50 times or 100 times maybe before. So I remember most of the poems we published, actually. There's very few that surprise me when I read them again for the first time in years. Because you read them over, you read them, you proofread them. I do all the typesetting and layouts, then I repost them online. You read them like 10 or 15 times before deciding, and then we have meetings where we talk about them. So all the poems we publish, I've read a lot, and they all live with me. Let's see. And Chris Beaver says, this may be off the mark, but since this is your memory, your place, maybe more images that give us more specifics about your experiences. They're deep experiences that help us connect with the depth of the ending fear of what is lost. Yeah, that's a good suggestion too. Like make it, more details, but specifically to you and your memory would be good too. Let's see. And Mark A. Grinier says, seeing Lahore is like Atlantis or Shangri-La puts into a mythical world, a world inside rather than concrete and stone. Yeah, I agree too. It's a good comment. And Chris Beaver is wondering if the columns again are it's supposed to be read differently. And no, I don't think so. I think that's just how it's laid out. Because other poems in this stack are the same. Okay, let's. I said I'd do two, and the next one up is short, so maybe we'll do the other one really quick. Usually we like to try to do two. So we'll do another one quick, and then we'll do the drawing. So this is another poem. It's one of the only ones in the set that's not about Lahore, which I think, I was going to say, I like the, this is really only a comment from Muhammad, but I like the poems on the theme. I think that works, having a lot of poems harken back to the city would make a good manuscript, I think. So I'd stick with that theme. I think it's definitely something worth exploring in extended form. This poem maybe is about the same and would fit, but it doesn't address the city directly. So let's do this really quick. Children, like butterflies, are made of joy and wings. They ricochet off walls into each other, hang from monkey bars over volcanoes, discover caves to inhabit beneath writing tables, draw doors on walls which open to secret gardens. Mountains on windows tell about their travels. They find their way through mazes beneath dining tables, become legends in forts made of pillows and blankets. They reach for the sky as they swing up, up, and up until they are taught about the apple which fell on Newton's head and how they'll fall like Icarus if they fly too high. That's a very short poem, number 2 by Muhammad Umar Jee Salimi. And let's see, so children like butterflies are made of joy and wings. It's an interesting title. It makes me curious about the poem, which there are a few functions a title can play, a few roles. And hopefully you can do all of them at once, but they sort of help to situate you a little bit, which we talk about a lot. They also make you curious and want to read, so they kind of draw you in. And this is a title that makes me curious. Children like butterflies are made of joy and wings. It's the joy and wings is a strange combination. And so, it's an interesting metaphor. And so it makes me curious to read the poem. Now, they ricochet off walls, but the problem is, if you're going to compare them to butterflies in the title, you kind of have to make them like butterflies all the time. And do butterflies really ricochet off walls and into each other? They flutter and dance and stuff like that. They don't really bounce off things. They get, their wings are fragile. They get smushed, and they don't really hang from monkey bars over volcanoes. So it's sort of it sets it up as if it's a metaphor that's going to play throughout the poem, and it really kind of doesn't work in at least half the instances, I'd say. But I like the details about the children, so I'm not sure if the title actually works, is what I'm getting at. It might be too leading in the wrong direction, and then you're just wondering, like, does it really? Are they really like butterflies this way? And a lot of times the answer is no, but hanging from monkey bars over volcanoes, discover caves to inhabit beneath writing tables, draw doors on walls, which open to secret gardens. So I like these details. Mountains on windows tell about their travels. I'm not sure the about. I think maybe tell of their travels sounds a little better. They find their way through mazes beneath dining tables, become legends and forts. There's a good rhythm to this poem. You can hear it too. Become legends and forts made of pillows and blankets. They reach for the sky. So reach for the sky is a bit of a cliche. As they swing up, up, and up. And so this is just kind of a weak thing to say, up, and up, until they are taught about the apple. So I like this transition now, until the transition there. So a lot of times in these critiques, I talk about how a poem has to have some kind of movement from one space to another. And this is a really clear, simple example of it, where at there we turn until they are taught about the apple. And so we go from this one space to the other where they're not taught and then they're taught. And that's the movement of the poem. That's like the journey that this is taking us on, until they are taught about the apple, which fell on Newton's head. So I like this. That's good. And how they fall like Icarus if they fly too high. I like what it's trying to say here, but I feel like how they'll fall like Icarus if they fly too high, it could be said a little more cleanly and with more interest. So I wonder how you could rephrase that. And how they'll fall like Icarus. I wonder if you could just end it. See, if they fly, the thing is the Icarus is the main detail. Like that's the image that you want. So then if they fly too high, it ends up coming after. So it's not as strong a way to end it. So maybe just delete that line and end it there. Up, up, up until they are taught about the apple which fell on Newton's head and how they'll fall like Icarus. Yeah, I'm not sure if that works. I'm not sure how to clean this up. But this last line is a little dull. And there's a way you could rephrase this somehow to keep that line strong. And that would be an improvement on that poem. Let me see the comments really quick. Let's see. Tara Paulson says this feels almost finished. Just W. I don't know what she's finishing to write. Let's see. So Mark A. Grenier says, I like the second poem a lot. It captures life in childhood and contrasts it with the mundane adult living, the imagination triumphant. Yeah, I agree. That's what I like about this poem. I like where it goes. And so maybe I mentioned that maybe this throws me off still, the butterflies problem. And maybe the way to fix that is to make this like an or situation. So children like butterflies are made of joy and wings, or they're like, and then something else. And keep using more metaphors. Like you can insert different metaphors as you move through this. Because I do like the progression of what's going on in the poem. It's exactly what Mark Grenier says, that it captures life in childhood and the imagination. So what else could they be like? And kind of push that through the poem a little bit. Let's see, any other... Let's see, Jessica Dawson mentions how the ending is kind of out of nowhere. Like it hits hard given the higher spirit of the poem. I think if the title were different and prepared us for that ending, it would fit, but otherwise the ending is kind of out of nowhere. Yeah, it's a hard turn. And I think, I don't have a problem with that though, myself. I like a hard turn. Like I like not knowing where I'm going, and then as long as you realize you're going somewhere, it works for me. I just like something that's more memorable than flying too high. Because I guess I didn't explain it completely, but Icarus flying too high is a cliche too, or just a trite kind of image. How does that, what is a really good Jack Gilbert poem about? He's reached the end of his triumph, right? He didn't fall, but he reached the end of his triumph is that Jack Gilbert poem. And so that doesn't say he flew too high. He reached the end of his triumph, And I'm not saying that would fit with his poem at all, but that's something different and unusual. Icarus flying too high is not. So you don't want to end on a note like that. It's like ending on a letdown almost a little bit. You want something interesting at the last line, so the poem is memorable and makes you want to read it again and share it. That's what poems are all about. Okay, so that's my advice. I hope this was helpful. There are a whole bunch of other poems here, but we don't have time for them. It's already been over a half an hour. But now we will do our drawing for next month. And let me pull in. So I just copy and paste all the comments into a list. And this is from the post Wednesday and the post last, in March. And I go to random.org, which has a really cool list randomizer right here, random.org. And what's cool about them is it's actual randomness, not pretend randomness. If you're a sciencey person, you appreciate that. But so here's the list. There's Jessica Dawson at the very top for now. And now I'm going to scroll down, if you can see it, and click randomize. And Mark Grinier, I should have taken him out because he was in last week. So we're not doing him, but then we'll do Brenda Herring, Kamarinsky, Noreen Ellis, Donna Best, Preska Kukrija, and Carrie Gunter Seymour. So there's our 5 right there. And if you put one in this week, I will keep it in for next month's drawing. And you can also add a second name if you pay attention to our posts and comment there. So you still have many chances. But for this month coming up, the month of May, it will be Brendan, Noreen, Donna, and Preksha. Oh, and Carrie Gunter Seymour. I think I have 5 spaces. Let me double check. Yeah, we have 5 spaces, 5 Fridays in May. And next week is Ali Mason, who was supposed to go today. And I couldn't find him until it was too late. But then I found him. So he'll be next week. And then these 5 for the month of May. So thanks for joining me again. It's always my pleasure. It's really a lot of fun. I'm so glad everybody can share their feedback and we can enjoy poetry this way and learn a lot. I learn stuff too, just thinking and trying to articulate what my thoughts are after reading a poem. So I enjoy it, and I hope you do too. Now, I should say really quick before we go, we do have lots of live streamed poetry content, and the open mic show is going to be rolling on like always, 12 p.m. Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific every Sunday. It's an hour-long show where we talk about the news of the week through poetry, and that's a lot of fun. I think that might be my favorite. Well, I like all this stuff. Never mind. I like everything. But and then next week's guest is going to be George Bilgier on the Rattlecast. That's Tuesday, April 21st at 9 p.m. Eastern. His newest book is Blood Pages. He's a well-known, everybody loves him kind of poet. Very entertaining, very fun guy, and you should enjoy that. So I hope you do. Hope to see you on Sunday morning and Tuesday evening, and next Friday too. So have a great week. Have a great weekend. Stay safe, and I'll talk to you later.